What's going on, everybody?
Howdy!
Sabretooth Chimp and Mr. Tripper.
Yeah, that's
Gonna
right.
do a little bit of a show here to discuss some decks that are gonna be in our tournament on the 29th, and then we're gonna talk some meta stuff too at the end of the show, towards the end of it. But
Yeah.
first, we'll start with the decks. But Tripper, how have you been, man?
I've been busy, man. I drive all over the United States, you know, just have fun.
Right.
Play a little bit of Hearthstone every now and again, but been busy recently.
Whenever you get a chance, you been able to watch any videos lately?
Not lately, no, sir.
Right. I've been playing a little bit. I've had a lot of work to do as well, and I've had to watch quite a bit of streams. It's easier for me to watch right now than it is for me to play. I mean, because you get home
Right.
tired and you just want to sit around and maybe watch a little bit, than rather than actually play. So that's been my week. I've got to rank 7, but I think I could have pushed a little farther. It's pretty easy to win right now with certain decks. So, but either way, neither one of us has been extremely successful this season.
Right. I think I'm either rank 19 or rank 18. I have I'll log on and stay on just long enough to complete my quests and then get back off. I just make sure to keep my quests clear with how busy I've been.
Right.
Every couple of days or so. So,
Trying to fix these.
yeah.
There we go. Fix the banner a little bit. That way people can see what it says. But yeah, we are having a tournament coming up on the 29th, and we do have all of the decks in. I'm gonna go ahead and bring those up in just a second. Let me make sure I got them. Yeah. We'll put this up real quick so everybody can see what we're talking about. I'm actually on the Facebook page. I'm just gonna scroll through that so people can see. It's actually easier than bringing all of them up. So the first decks we can talk about are the deck list for Ryder. He's bringing a Reno Mage list, what looks to be a mid-rangey aggro shaman, ending with Aya, which most of them are. This is more of an aggro shaman list, and then he's playing a Dragon Warrior. Yeah, this is a pretty standard lineup, I think. It's I think you're having the best deck in the format being aggro shaman, and then you have what a lot of the pros consider to be one of the highest win rates in the format being Reno Mage.
Right.
Pretty standard deck list. The only thing that is a little different is that his dragon package for warrior is a little bit top heavy compared to some lists where he plays Deathwing over like Ysera. Deathwing's kind of a bigger threat, but Ysera ends up winning a lot of the value game with like Reno matchups.
Sure.
What do you think about that switch out where he's actually played Deathwing instead of Ysera?
I mean, I haven't played with Control Warrior against the current Reno Mage, but I would definitely assume that Asera is better. But maybe it ends up being stronger against, for instance, the Druid decks that are just trying to spam a bunch of Jade Golems.
Right.
Like, I remember a lot of people saying that, oh, now that Druid has this Jade Idol card, like, Control Warrior just can't beat it.
Right.
Ever. And then Control Warrior went away, and so it was like, oh, well, I guess the Druid deck did kill it. So maybe Deathwing is more of a tech thing against Jade Idol rather than worrying about the Reno Mage matchup.
Right. I think I think Deathwing is more of a clear against your mid range decks like you said, because mid range
Right.
Shaman where it also plays the Jade package, it's super hard to get rid of Aya. Like Aya is just one of those cards that if when Aya sticks, you're immediately like, okay, do I have Polymorph or do I have Hex? Because if I don't and I'm not playing one of those classes, then I'm probably gonna have a tough time dealing with this card.
Right.
Which me and you said previously when we did our review of Mean Streets of Gadgetan, we were like, Aya's gonna be broken.
Yep.
And it ends up Aya is pretty broken. Aya is pretty good, and I think he definitely teched his list to be a little bit conservative against that style of play. But the one thing I think that it loses against though is those Reno matchups where like if you end up with a Deathwing, Reno doesn't doesn't care if you play Deathwing. You know, you play Deathwing,
Sure.
and then Reno's like, well, great, I have, you know, the polymorph, or I have. You don't get any value because they're not. Yeah. Or Frostbolt. Yeah.
Right.
They have many ways to kill a Deathwing, or at least
Right.
make it where you don't have any benefit. You have to discard your hand as well, and then you don't get any value. Whereas Ysera, you know, you end up getting that card off of it. I think that's the difference there, and you don't have to discard your hand at the same time. So
Right.
there's been a lot of talk about those two things, but his Reno package is pretty much the same one that I've been playing on stream for a while. It's just your pretty standard.
It seems pretty
Let's see if
basic.
I can bring it up here so we can see everything. Make sure it stays. Yeah, there we go. That's better. The only thing different than mine was he ends at Pyroblast, whereas I don't play a Pyroblast. I don't know what card I have in there different than his. He doesn't play an ice barrier. He played a Pyroblast over the ice barrier. I actually play an ice barrier.
That's interesting.
I think ice barrier is really good against your patches decks, because patches are just they're just too quickly, and you just want to be able to gain life. So that that's a difference. But otherwise, I mean, his aggro shaman is pretty standard, except he plays 2 Azure Drakes, which is, people are trying to, I think, cut a little bit. Like, they're trying to get greedier and maybe play like what other cards is he missing? I can't actually see it. Either way, a lot of times they're only running one of these Azure Drakes.
Right.
Maybe he's missing, let's see. No, I mean, you don't really want to play a Storm in this deck, so I don't know. It looks like a pretty typical list, though. He plays 2 deckhands, 2 Buccaneers in the patches, which is the full-on Pirate package. Where a lot of people are also trying to cut that down as well, because late game South Sea deckhand is just not really what you want to draw, especially against Reno decks. Just doesn't pressure at all. So, but his decks seem pretty typical. What I would think was going to be pretty good. So we'll move on, and we can look at Ice Wolf's deck list.
All right.
Ice Wolf brought a Reno Warlock and a Reno Mage, and I believe he brought a Reno Priest as well. Is that the other deck that he brought? Yeah, Reno Priest as well. So he brought 3 Reno decks because, well, Reno's really good against a lot of the aggro decks. If you get the draws that you need, granted, aggro can just burst out and kill you.
Right.
But do you think that he's giving up a lot of, you know, maybe he's being a little greedy? Maybe he thinks that he's going to end up in a matchup where he faces the guy that has 2 aggro decks in the mid-range deck?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's more comfortable playing control decks.
Right.
I remember back to when I played in the first tournament and did well with some budget decks. I really just focused on my strengths, and maybe he's just doing the same thing. I think that he could end up being in trouble in the event. Because sometimes those fast aggro decks, they just get the right draw, and they just put the Reno deck out of commission, and it doesn't take much to just basically roll the dice and it come up snake eyes a few times in a row when you're out of the event.
Right.
So.
But in this certain, you know, lineups, I mean, a lot of times if you just get Reno, you just win. I mean, if you can coin out Reno on 5 or play him on 6, a lot of times you've done well enough to win the game. And whether you have anything left in the tank or not, you're probably going to win that game. So we can move on to the deck list for Riven, because those are pretty standard Reno lists. It looks like Riven is going to be playing a Dragon Priest, a Buff Paladin, which is a little bit surprising.
And that sounds fun.
And a Jade Druid list, which he did not bring Shaman, which is one of the bigger surprises. And he also didn't bring Pirate Warrior, which is another thing that I'm a little surprised about. You know, a lot of these guys didn't bring Pirate Warrior, which is a little bit shocking to me. So we'll take a look at this. One of my favorite lists, actually, is the Dragon Priest that he brought. me get that pulled up real quick. I'll scroll back to it.
Looks pretty basic.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple Dragon Priest. He actually is playing 2 Dragonfire Potion, which means he's trying to, I think, tech against Jades, because a lot of times if Jades gets a board, then you can't beat them because you're trying to, if they get ahead on the board, they're going to beat you. And the problem with Dragon Priest is it has to be ahead on the board to win, or they're just going to lose. So I like the 2 Dragonfire Potions. I think that's pretty cool tech for maybe a tournament where he expected to see a little bit more Shaman Jades or Druid Jades in the mix.
Sure.
But other than that, yeah, you're right. It's pretty standard. Moving on to his buff Paladin.
Dudes.
Buff dudes. This is like the most interesting thing, man. He's playing both the Ragnaroses and a Tyrion at the top end. Do you think that's a little greedy?
I mean, it certainly feels greedy.
I wonder how much he's tested this deck. I mean, even as far as to have like 3 8-drops and a Divine Favor in your list, just seems a little weird, Like, the guy's got 3 8-drops and a Divine Favor in his list, so it's like, man, this guy, he's about the greed, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, I like it. I think it's gonna be fun to watch. Definitely be fun to cast. There may be some big plays happening with this list, so. And then moving on to his last one, which is his Jade Druid. Pretty standard Jade Druid. You don't see anything really out of the normal. He plays the Jade package with Gadget Sand, so he can try to go infinite with those Jade Idols. And 1 Ancient of War, just in case he gets in trouble with, like some quick decks. He can either Jade Behemoth on 6th into an Ancient of War, try to stall off those aggro decks till he can build a board behind it.
Right.
So this is a pretty standard list other than that. But I am excited about Buff Dudes.
Yeah, Buff Dudes looks like it'll be the most fun to watch out of all the decks I've seen so far. Human,
who was the tournament winner last time, said you're embarrassing. Team Ribbon. We'll move on to the OT deck list here. He's also bringing a Paladin deck, but his is the standard anything can happen Paladin, which is probably my favorite deck list. I mean, it's not,
I know that.
It's not that good. Granted, it can win games. Tice just won 6 in a row at the Trinity series with it, but it's not really that good. But at the same time, it's fun, and I think personally it beats Reno decks. If you're able to assemble your pieces, you pretty much get a Reno deck. The first Anyfin gets them down low enough. If they have Reno, they play it. The second one usually kills them. So
right.
And if you have your Ivory Knight hit another Anyfin, then you're GG on Reno decks.
Right.
So we'll move on to the next deck list that he brought, which is a Rogue deck list. And in a tournament where there's not a lot of Pirate Warriors or Aggro Shamans, Rogue seems like a pretty good, choice in my opinion. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I've run into it a few times recently. Right at the end of December when I was grinding to get to rank 10.
Hi, baby.
Sorry. And then again, I've run into it a couple of times. I've never really had an issue beating it when I've run into it, though I've mostly been playing the more aggressive decks to try and get wins quickly.
Right. And a lot of times you find when you play like a Pirate Warrior deck, you can pretty much eat a Rogue because they take too long to set up, and like you kill them in turn 4, turn 5, and they're just sitting there like, well, I wish my Conceal was good enough, and it's not.
Right.
And they don't really play any defensive cards except like Backstab or like Eviscerate, which, it can help, mitigate the early game. It can Shaman really well, but against like, Pirate Warrior, you're spending 2 mana to deal with a 1/1 or like a 3/2 maybe. So
right.
The 1 mana spells can be really broken in Pirate Warrior against Rogue. So, but no, it's a pretty standard Miracle list. I think it's really good in this tournament though. Without I haven't seen a ton of aggro decks. So
right. So you might have picked the right deck for this event.
Right. It's one of those calls where you have to make. You go, okay, if there's not a lot of aggro decks, I can probably just get there against some of these lists.
Sure.
Granted, you do have to win with all 3 of your decks, but that might be a pretty good win if he can get a matchup against like a Reno or something.
Right.
Something where they can't just remove his board fairly easily.
I like it.
So, Priest, he's playing a Dragon Priest here with a Master Spell. I'm a
Okay,
little,
that's neat.
I'm not sure about it. I've never actually tried. This is almost a carbon copy of my list that I was playing on stream, which he was actually in my stream watching me play. But he's just teched in a Master Spell and a Entomb.
Yeah, I
So
was looking at the Entomb too, for sure.
I think Entomb is really good against some of the like Ayas. It's really good against like Ayas and maybe like Ragnaros or something like that.
Right.
But the Master Spell is a little bit. It's a little bit weird. I don't know that I've ran into a moment lately. Maybe against the mirror match where they just start throwing taunts, or against like Shaman where they put up a lot of taunts. Maybe he's having problem with Aya, and he's like, okay, Master Spell gets rid of that death rattle effect. Maybe he's been
Right.
running into a lot of N'Zoth. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that one, but it looks like it's a card that maybe he plays one of because he has a reason for it, and I just don't
Oh, I'm
understand it.
sure.
I don't know the reason behind it, but um, those are OT's deck list. What do you think about that lineup with the Rogue, the Priest, and the Paladin?
I mean, it's very. It's an eclectic bunch of decks. Like, if you had shown me this and asked me how it would do against the normal meta, I would be like, "Ooh, I don't know." But he might have just picked the right lineup for the tournament, because you can steal a win with the anything deck against
Right.
basically any deck.
Yeah, if he gets the
And
matchups he wants, yeah.
right, exactly. Yeah, if he gets the matches he wants, he'll just he might just end up walking away with the title
Right.
just by using the right types of decks for the event.
It's like he tried to play counter meta decks with like Rogue is pretty good
Right.
against the non aggro decks. Priest is I think Priest is one of those decks that you can consider like just your sturdy deck. Like it does pretty good against everything. It doesn't do exceptional against anything.
Right.
It's not like blows you away, but it'll grind you out. Like it'll if it
Oh
needs
yeah.
to, it can grind you out. And then Anyfin is just one of those decks that I mean, if the cards fall in the right place and you're able to just like play a Doomsayer into a Solemn Vigil into a Murloc raid leader, and you just win from that point. Like sometimes you just win with that deck. So I think you're right. I think he could just walk away with it. So the deck list for Sawwall, he actually sent in photos from his phone. So they're pieced together in a lot of different pictures, but we can bring him up here. It looks like he's playing what he calls Pirate Aids, which is your standard Pirate Shaman list.
Okay.
He's also playing a Pirate Warrior, and then he's playing a Reno Dragon Priest.
Okay.
Now the other two decks, the both the aggro decks are pretty standard, but his Reno Dragon Priest, if you can piece it together as I flip through it, there it's almost pretty standard, except he plays Sinjin instead of playing the Defender of Argus, and
Right.
he also plays oh no, he does play Ysera. So he's got a pretty standard list, except he plays Sinjin instead of Defender, and I'm thinking it's because he doesn't expect to keep a board, so
Right.
Defender of Argus is not going to be very beneficial to him. As far as the other two deck lists go, they're pretty standard. You play your Pirate Warrior deck, and you can just see what it has in it. It's
Yeah, you play the Pirate Warrior deck, you get your free wins. You play the Shaman Pirate deck, and you get your free wins. So
and the only thing that I think is going to like hinder this guy at being really aggressive and just coming out of like round one with an easy win, or coming out of round two with an easy win, because he brought the two best decks in my opinion, is if he runs into guys that brought like all Reno. Like if he plays the all Reno list, which I'm not sure of the
right.
matchups right now. I don't even have them on my hand. But if he runs into that, like he could have trouble. Because again, Reno Priest is the worst of the Renos, and at some
Right.
point he's going to have to go up against the other Renos. So, and then in the mirror match with Reno Priest, it's all comes down to how good your Draconid operatives were. Like it really is. At a lot of times, it comes down to who got their value cards to hit on key. But pretty standard there, except the Reno Priest. We'll move
Right.
on to a player who's been pretty well known in the Knoxville community, Nibble Swap. He's bringing a Miracle Rogue list. Looks more along the aggressive side. He plays Patches and Swashbuckler. Or Patches, Swashbuckler, and Buccaneer, which if you're going to play the Pirate package, you add, probably one Swashbuckler, but he doesn't play any South Sea deckhands. He's bringing a Shaman list, which is this is the standard aggro Shaman where it caps out at 1 Azure Drake.
Right.
It's a lot. It feels a lot less about value, whereas like when you play Aya, you're going for the value plays, and in this one you're just going to try to kill them. And then he's playing a Pirate Warrior. So
Okay.
he brought 3 of the big 5, which we'll talk about later, but the top 3 in the big 5 are Aggro, Shaman, Pirate Warrior, and Miracle Rogue. And he's brought all 3 of them to this. So he's pretty much brought his list with the Pirate package in each one. Do you think he's got a pretty good lineup against what we've seen so far?
I think he certainly has a chance, but as you were saying earlier, if he runs into the guy with all Renos, and Reno shows up on coined out on turn 5 or on turn 6, that's going to be the game. So we'll just have to see. But lots of patches attacking.
Right.
In our future.
There's going to be a lot of 1-drops played,
Yeah.
and and there's going to be a lot of moments where we see probably. And I like that he brought Questing Miracle. He included Shaku in it, which is something that I know Reynad had been doing for a long time, and that Saviz had been doing. I think they were trying to say, people said Shaku was bad, and then it ended up being not terrible. You end up with a pretty good turn 3 if you were able to play Shaku on curve, and with the meta being as quick as it is, or Reno deck's not playing anything a lot of times on turns 1 and 2 to trade with a 3/2 or a 2/3, or you even have to worry about it. You get pretty good value out of Shaku. So
Right.
I think when we did our Mean Streets of Gadgetan, we pretty much said Shaku was terrible. We were looking at Shaku like.
I definitely remember that.
And I think if the meta had shaped up a little differently, I don't think me and you understood how much small time Buccaneer and Patches was going to impact the meta. I think if we had took that into effect, we probably could have looked at it and been like, okay, maybe Shaku's going to be pretty good. But us thinking that mid range was gonna start to dominate a little more, and then Reno decks were going to be really good. Us thinking those lines, Shaku doesn't really fit in that, because if it's a mid range style of meta, he just gets eaten every time, and you get one card out of him. So that's it's a little bit of a insight to the way we were thinking there, but
Right. Yeah.
his deck lists are pretty standard. I think he brought what he feels is the best in the meta, and I think I agree with him. Along those 3 decks, if I was going to go to a tournament, I think I would probably play those 3 decks. So,
Right.
we will move on to the deck list for Carrie, who has played in every tournament we've had so far.
Hooray!
Unfortunately, he hasn't come up with a win yet, but it's good to see him coming back. He's playing Reno Mage, a Pirate Warrior, and I want to say, yes, Pirate Shaman. So he's playing the greedier package, or the more value package, as I like to call it, with the Aya at the end. Instead of playing the one that we saw previously that was more geared towards just going face, this is more geared to making, I think, in my opinion, value trades sort of in the middle of the game. You get a lot of damage in the beginning of the game, but you have to make some trades towards the middle of the game, and then you try to end the game with, like, an Aya that sticks, or a couple lava bursts, something like that, some extra damage, a Flame Tongue that has a great value, building a big board behind it. A lot of times I see people who play this list, they use their Flame Breathe Faceless as a consecutive board clear. Instead of actually just going face with it, they just keep using Flame Breathe Faceless as one of those things that removes the board, because it's a big thing that can take a lot of damage, and you use your little minions to just keep pressing damage. So he's brought two of the big 5, and then Reno Mage, which is part of the big 5, but not something that everyone's bringing. What do you think about his deck list and how it's fitting towards the tournament so far?
I mean, as I was saying before, I think we're going to see a lot of patches jumping out of the decks and doing his thing. There, well, there's a lot of Reno decks running around, so we're going to see a lot of Reno mirrors. So there's going to be a lot of really long games.
Right.
There's also going to be a lot of really quick games because when it's uh, pirate deck versus pirate deck, those games are just lightning fast.
Right.
So,
And
I think he's yeah. I mean, it looks like he brought the decks to try and roll the dice, try and get there.
I think what he expects is that he's going to get pretty decent wins with Shaman and Warrior. And
Sure.
then if there's a deck that he gets stuck on, Reno Mage is typically really good to get you out of that. Like, I think as long as you're competent enough to pilot the list, and you're not going to make errors, because there are so many lines of play in this deck, and you feel confident enough to play it, you're gonna come out on top a lot of the time, because it's really good list. It's one of those lists that I find it's probably my favorite, and
Right.
it's yeah. So I think that's kind of the way he was maybe geared to going. I'm not 100% sure there. I haven't actually talked to him about it, but
Sure.
he did message me and say that there's a lot less Shaman that he thought there was going to be, and that he would have done better bringing Rogue instead of this list. Which
I could see that.
so
But this again, I think you're spot on. I think that this deck it'll end up helping him get past certain decks, or at least get a win against certain decks that his other two decks are having issue with.
and last but not least, we have Avantes, who is if you guys don't know, he's the host of Hero Power, and he's going to be in the tournament this time.
That's awesome.
So he's decided to bring what looks to me as a control-ish mid-range shaman.
I'm looking at that right now. That looks like fun.
That does, doesn't it? It's one of those shamans where you can look at it and go, okay, it's not the pirate shaman that we've all come to know.
Right.
He's actually playing Wide Eyes, which is, I mean, it's one of my favorite cards, honestly.
Yeah, I was and a gold version of it too.
It's pretty, yeah. So we might see a gold 10/10 for him, but he's actually playing one Doomsayer.
See,
That's a
and
little
a dirty rat.
that's a little different for a deck that is playing like Jade Claws and Totem Golems. It's weird to see him playing an anti-tempo card in a deck that usually wins off the back of getting tempo early and then keeping it in the late game.
Right.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a different list, and it looks. He's got double Jade Chieftain, which is something I'm excited about too. Not a lot of people are playing Jade Chieftain right now, so it looks like a fun list. His
I
second
agree.
list is what looks to be Dragon Pirate Warrior. He's playing a pretty conservative list. I think he expects that a lot of the Pirate Warriors lose to Pirate Shaman, so he's got two Fierce Monkeys
Right.
instead of the one. He's playing
Right.
double Ravaging Ghoul. He's trying to make sure that he can keep the mid game stable instead of letting Pirate Shaman just run all over him,
That makes sense.
and then just ending with the granddaddy of all, Ragnaros. Usually can take over a game if you can get there. And then his last deck is again my favorite list right now, Reno Mage, and this one is a carbon copy of the deck that I play, except he's not running an Ice Barrier either. He's running a Kabbalist Tomb. Oh no, a Flame Lance and a Kabbalist Tomb. I also don't run Kabbalist Tomb, which is another tech. But what do you think about this, man? He's not running Burgly Bully, but he is running Archmage Antonidas. That card has come up in the last probably 2 or 3 weeks as being one of the most
I
powerful
know.
cards in the Reno matchup. What do you think? How do you think that these three lists are going to do? Especially this Reno Mage where he's playing Archmage against other Reno Mages. How do you think he's going to do?
I mean, I definitely like the mage deck. I've definitely noticed in the little bit I've been playing, especially recently, running into the Archmage Antonidas, and you just have those games where it's like, oh, okay, I can't kill Antonidas, I'm dead next turn.
Right.
Antonidas presents that level of threat. Obviously, running Reno and Thurston allows you to get to the late game against the more aggressive decks. or get to the late game and uh, dump a bunch more spells in your hand to really get the board back. And I don't know about this. I haven't encountered or obviously played with a dragon pirate list yet, so it looks like it should be strong, but I can't say one way or the other. Maybe. Do you think? Yeah, like you were saying, it might be better against the pirate shaman. Maybe he's just hedging all his bets, trying to make sure he doesn't lose the board, and then just brings it home with the big guns at the end against the aggressive decks.
Draconid Crushers and Ragnaros.
Yeah, and then the shaman deck definitely looks interesting. I think
that would be the most fun to cast, right? Like this deck right here, that'll be the one where you're like, okay, he played Jade Chieftain, and then it's like, okay, he's got the Hex for the guys, Ragnaros, and then he plays Aya, and it's like, that'll be fun to watch. So
I agree.
I'm kind of excited about that. But that's our tournament entrance, and those are their deck list. So we can move away from that now, and back to some more meta talk from me and Mr. Tripper. A couple of decks that I was going to bring up was we have been talking and discussing about what is called the Big Five, which was announced by Vicious Syndicate on their data reports. The Big Five was actually Aggro Shaman, Pirate Warrior, Miracle Rogue, Reno Lock, and Reno Mage. I'll throw up a couple of lists right now that start us off, and just a second. There's one, and the second is this one, and then the last one is this one, and we'll move them around so people can see. Oops, get that up there. Here's the three list that I have been running into and that I've been also tampering with. We have a what I would consider your standard. Well, maybe the last one's not as standard, but I'll say that you're gonna see the first two a lot more often than you're gonna see the last one. The last one is just geared to doing face damage and playing weapons and doing more face damage, then playing weapons, then doing more face damage, and that's about it. The other two can be a little bit more value game where you're allowed to make trades with like your Jade Golems and such. But what do you think about right now Aggro Shaman, man, being what a lot of people are seeing as over 14% of decks on the ladder right now are Aggro Shaman, and the class itself is over 25% of the meta?
Well, I think the big thing is something we're going to end up covering a little bit later on, but it's the fact that if you're trying to grind to legend quickly, that this is the type of deck that you're going to bat, that if you're decent and you understand your matchups, you're going to bat over 50%. It may not have as high of a win rate as other decks you want to play with, but it's got a faster turnaround. So you're able to play a lot more games and grind your way to the legend rank, or whatever rank. Like if you're just aiming for rank 10 or just aiming for rank 5, I know people that do each of those things. But no matter what, if you want to get to that rank quick and then you can start playing your fun goof around decks,
right?
Then the deck for you is definitely Aggro Shaman, because it's still solid, because Shaman cards are still ridiculous. Like that hasn't changed. None of the powerful cards have rotated out just yet. And so yeah, you just jump in the ranked queue with Aggro Shaman, and you know you're gonna be able to rattle off
free wins
enough games to get to where you want to go quickly.
Because there's a lot of things that just can't come back from these lists. Like rogues have so much trouble with any of these lists.
Right.
You have, I mean, really, at the end of the day, Reno wants to play Reno 1/6, but if they don't have it, and their AoEs came in clunky, and they had to play Hellfire and an Abyssal Enforcer, then they've taken 6 damage from themselves. Lava Burst and probably a weapon just kills them. And then at the end of the day, if they don't have the answers to even the big man, Flame Breathe Faceless, who has made a huge comeback, they just lose a lot of times. Like you have to have Reno or you die. And that's a lot of the problems I think right now that we're seeing from the mid-range decks is they don't have answers to how quick these decks can be because they want to kind of do the same thing with keeping tempo, but they can't because these decks kill them at such a quick pace that they can't stay stable.
Right.
When a 1-mana 3/2 can trade with your 2-drop, it's just it becomes a little bit, you know, it's like they outvalued you. They're winning the game at that point.
Right.
So, but moving on, the second would have been Pirate Warrior of the Big Five. And we all know what that deck can do. It's annoying, but it is 12% of the meta right now. I don't actually have a list to pull up of it. It's not uncommon what's in it. I was gonna I'll bring up real quick a couple of the decks that I've been toying around with as we go along. But you know, we saw Pirate Warrior at the beginning of the season. You know, once it came out, just completely obliterate the meta. It's continuing to do that. I mean, it went away for a minute. That's because people went more to mid-rangey list. But honestly, you know, we're not gonna see it go away. It just gets free wins. And but the next on the list that I would say is probably the most important deck right now besides Shaman is our Reno Lock. I'll move these around so everybody can see it. And this is the Reno Lock that I've been playing, and this is the one that Trump plays. I actually got this list from Trump. It plays the Shambler. But what do you think about this, man? These lists are now moving away from playing... instead of playing the combo with Leroy and Faceless Manipulator, they're moving to Jiraxis-based decks. What do you think about that?
I think it's more to combat the other Reno decks, because I've watched. I actually have watched a little bit of. It wasn't a stream. It was Kibler posted the video where he's like made it back to Legend, and in that video he discusses, you know, I'm gonna be fine. Like he was playing. I think he was playing Priest, or was he playing Mage?
Oh, he was playing.
I
Mage.
honestly don't.
He's playing Mage.
Yeah, but he's playing against a Warlock, and he's at a point where he's just like, okay, as long as he doesn't have Jiraxis here, I'm good to go. And that's playing Jiraxis is what allows you to beat the more controlling decks. Whereas if you're playing combo and you get down into where you're working from rank 5 to Legend, like I remember from previous seasons watching some of the other top streamers play, and they would just be saying, oh, well, I've just got to do this and this and this so I don't lose to the combo. And then I've got to do this and this and this so I don't lose to the combo. And at the very end, their opponent shows them, yep, I had the combo the whole time, but because you kept playing correctly, I wasn't able to get there. And then they concede. And so I think that it's really just about understanding, hey, I'm already winning the aggro matchup, so now let me beat the other control decks. And so that's what Jiraxis does.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. I think the point of Jiraxis is that other Reno decks can't beat endless 6/6s. I mean, you only have so much removal in your deck, so if you just keep making 6/6s, but keep making Infernals...
for 2 mana every turn.
Yeah, you're gonna beat them eventually. As long as, you know, they don't find ways to burst out and kill you, which is really hard for Reno decks to do. I mean, they just, unless they're playing the combo, they just, you know, and with Kazakus nowadays, you know, and Kazakus being as powerful as he is, giving you armor, it's still seriously hard. Because I've watched Trump play this list, and the crazy thing is he plays Jiraxis every time he gets to turn 9. He doesn't play anything else. If he has it in his hand, he just plays it, and then the funny thing is he still is able to go brand Kazakus, get a 5 and a 10, or a 10 and a 10, or a 1 and a 10, get armor and kill something, then make a 6/6, and get armor, then summon 3 friendlies and make a 6/6, and it's like, oh my gosh, this guy just, you know, like, this guy just won the game. He just got 7 armor. He's at 22 health with Jiraxis against another Reno. He's not gonna lose this game.
Yeah.
So
you just. So yeah, that's what I think what's going on. They just shifted away from the combo because the combo wasn't necessary to beat the aggro deck, and the other Reno decks can actually take lines of play to play around the combo. And so, yeah, but it turns out that Jiraxis absolutely counters any other Reno decks.
Now my absolute favorite list right now, and I'll bring it up right here, is, like I've been saying the entire stream, is your Reno Mage. Now the reason being is that a lot of times this deck is super consistent, and it feels more consistent with these cards than the Reno Lock, because you have the ability to play Alexstrasza in this deck, which you really can't do in Reno Locks, because there's really no need to do that. So if you're gonna play a 9-mana, extravagant card, it's gonna be Jiraxis, obviously. And if Mage had the ability to play Jiraxis, they would too.
They would.
Yeah, but Alexstrasza is really good in this deck, because in the Reno matchup, which is the one thing that they thought would be bad against, or even like the Control Warrior matchup, when they've gained all the armor, you just play Alexstrasza, you take half their life from them, and then you're like, okay, now let's do this. I played Kazakus with Brandon play, and I've got both 8 damage spells. I'm about to drop some things. I'm about to make you pay. So you either find a way out or you lose.
Right.
And this is definitely my favorite list. It's the most fun list to play right now, and you get to these moments, especially against like aggro decks, where you're just like, there's no way you can win. You just look at them and you're like, you go turn 2, or my favorite thing is to go turn 4, Dirty Rat into Doomsayer, and like watch them have a 7/7 in their hand, and then it just drops on the board, and I'm like, I win the game. Right. And I'm like, you can't win now. And it's my favorite thing. So that's this list is super controlly, but it's really fun. What do you think about it, man? What do you think about Reno Mage in the meta right now?
Yeah, the little bit I watched, and I think that was on the Brian Kibler video, it definitely seemed like it gave you a lot of options. I unfortunately just haven't played with the deck at all. I'm still playing with basically a budget account right now, so I don't have all the legendaries. I don't even have an Alexstrasza, for instance. But from what I've seen of it, it seems very powerful.
So I'll ask you this little combo: the Burgly Bully into Archmage Antonidas, where Burgly Bully gives you a ton of coins when they play a spell, and then you just play coins into Archmage. Like after you play your Archmage, you just go coin, 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 bunch of fireballs in your hand. You're like, can you beat me?
Right.
It was one of the cool things that I saw Trump do, and I watch Trump a lot, and I've seen others like Saviz and Firebat do it, and I was like, man, that is awesome. Because Burgly Bully is one of those cards where you're just kind of like, it's not as good as Azure Drake, why would I play it? And then you're like, wait a second, Archmage Antonidas with a bunch of coins is really broken. So
coins turning into fireballs seems fair.
0 mana, get a fireball, gain 1 mana.
Yeah, seems strong.
So, but like a lot of the pros say, Reno Mage is probably one of the more efficient decks. The only reason that you see a lot of the results being skewed is because it's more complicated to play.
Sure.
As far as you go, and for our listeners who end up being newer to the game, would you say that it's better for you to play harder decks to play like this, or would you advise them to stick to like your aggro shaman curve decks?
I would advise people when you're just starting. I would advise people to find what they have the most fun with. I think that anytime I've talked to anyone, I'm really big on telling them to play with all 9 of the classes. That when you get an arena, also play with all of the classes and run into all these interactions, and you'll end up finding the type of deck that you have the most fun with. And if you end up having, I've known people in Magic the Gathering that they really like playing the overly complicated decks, even though they're not really that good at playing them, but that's the deck that they have fun playing, even if they don't have the best of win results to back that up. So that's what I would suggest, is just find what you have the most fun with. If you're just trying to jump in there and grind a legend, then you probably want to play either the aggro shaman or the pirate warrior.
Right.
And you'll get there quicker, and because you're playing more games, you'll get more reps quicker, and you'll learn what you need to do at a faster pace too. So you can run to whatever rank you want to run to with the deck. But I would never really try and push someone into one deck or another. It's really just find what you have the most fun with.
Right, and play style, and
yes, and play style is important.
And but as far as this goes, let's say that this is an average player and he's reaching the top 5 ranks, maybe even legend, and he's wanting to experiment with like Reno Mage. Do you suggest him, if he wants to get to the higher ranks, to continue playing with these, tempo decks, or would you say go for it, man? Like, if you think, you're already good enough, just go for it.
Right. I mean, certainly. I think that you should probably, again, just build each of the top decks and jump in there and find what brings you the most joy. If you're really... If you are playing the aggro shaman a ton and you're having fun, but then you're like, man, all these other people, they're saying the Reno Mage is really the deck that I need to be playing, and I've got the stuff to do it. You put it together, you play it, you don't have fun with it, well then just go back to aggro shaman.
Right. Well, moving on, and I'll leave these decks up because I don't actually have the Control Warrior list with me. I can rattle off some of the cards, and I'm sure a lot of us know, but Control Warrior right now at the top legend ranks is making a huge comeback because of its high success rate against what is considered the best deck in the format, being aggro shaman. So, give us what do you think your take is on Control Warrior making its comeback in the legend ranks?
I mean, it just makes sense. The only time anybody was really talking about, oh well, Control Warrior's dead, was just when the Druid deck was kind of running rampant because everybody just wanted to do the Jade thing.
Right.
Now that's kind of calmed down a pretty good bit, and we've got your basic aggro decks running around again. And what does Control Warrior like to eat? Those aggro decks.
Right.
So Control Warrior's hungry. He's been hiding in a corner for a little bit,
and
there's some food on the table, so he's gonna go eat it. So I'm not surprised at all.
So from what we've seen in some of our data reports that are coming out, even from Tempo Storm and Vicious Syndicate, what they suggest you to play in the lower ranks would be Dragon Priest. From rank 5 to Legend is Reno Mage, and your top Legend players are going to be playing what they consider either Aggro Shaman or Control Warrior to combat that. What's your take on the fact that in the lower ranks they think you should be playing Dragon Priest?
I'm honestly not sure. I think that you would probably still do better to play one of the either Aggro Shaman or Pirate Warrior, just so you can get as many reps in as quickly as possible.
I think the reason they suggest this is, Dragon Priest can be really grindy against any deck.
Yes.
And it has the ability to do more than enough damage to kill Reno. And I think in the lower ranks, you're not sure what you're going to run into. You might see anything, you might see Hunter decks, and they're really grindy against those decks, and they're able to stabilize. They're able to keep Pirate from killing them with the turn 2 2/4 taunts, the Worm Rest agents, and they play early game Northshire Clerics to draw cards and continue that. They play board control, with 2 AoEs being in Holy Novas, or maybe 1 Holy Nova and an Excavated Evil, and they play Bookworms to outvalue and outtempo you. So I think the reason being is that you just really don't know what you're going to see, and I think the most grindy, like middle of the pack deck is Dragon Priest. It's one of those decks that if you're good enough to climb to rank 5, you can climb to rank 5 with Dragon Priest. So I think that's reason being. Moving to the 5 to Legend ranks, they suggest Reno Mage, which is a little surprising for me. Do you think it's because they have the higher win rate with Reno Mage, that you need to win every game because there's no more bonus stars, and that you need
that's certainly what's going on there. It's the deck that if you know what you're doing, you're going to have the higher overall win rate. So that makes the most sense.
Right.
But I also, again, think that either Aggro Shaman or Pirate Warrior, you can jump in there and you can rattle off a ton of games. It will not be as efficient as far as games played, but you might still get the Legend faster than a Reno Mage, just based on time playing the game, just because of how many extra games you can get in.
Right, and against the meta, Aggro Shaman has a 52% win rate, and against
Right.
and with Reno Mage has a 51% win rate. So I mean that 1% can be huge if you're not getting bonus doors. I mean honestly,
Oh,
it's the difference between you winning like 6 out of 10 and 5 out of 10. So I mean,
yep.
and you don't want to stay even. So,
Nope.
but and then top legend they say Aggro Shaman or Control Warrior, but a lot of times they say Control Warrior if you're trying to counter the meta. And
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think Control Warrior is one of those things that it has the grindiness and enough removal to deal with any aggro deck. Mid-range decks really, like, especially Dragon Priest, they just can't kill them. You gain too much life being a Control Warrior. And against Reno decks, I think a lot of times that's like a 50-50 matchup, because it's really tough to kill Reno and it's really tough to kill Control Warrior. So it's going to go to fatigue, and it just depends on if Control Warriors play an Elise, which a lot of times they like to do. Can Reno Lock or Reno Mage deal with 6 or 7 legendaries if they're good ones? Who knows?
Right.
It's one of those things where it's kind of like a dice roll. That's why that's my opinion. The Reno versus Control Warrior is a 50-50. But
I can see that.
But I think that's pretty much our look at the meta right now. Is there anything you wanted to add, man?
Just that this last Tavern Brawl with the choose 10 different cards, I had a lot of fun with it, and I won at least once with every class. And the secret to my success was I put Reno Mage in every deck I built. I mean, I put Reno Jackson in every deck I built. Even in the Hunter deck, it was so funny.
Reno Jackson.
I was playing a deck with Savannah Highmanes and Call of the Wild and everything, and my opponent's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I'm making all these Jade Idols and doing this, and I'm just like, okay, cool. He gets kind of low, and finally he's like, next turn I'm going to kill you, and I was just like, Reno.
GG.
And he conceded. Yeah, he just conceded. He was like, oh, and your hero power kills me next turn, and I can't do 30 to you. Like, yep.
That's game.
That's a GG, folks.
I had a lot of fun with it too, though. I had a different strategy. I just played Astral Communion and dropped as many big things that I could. Innervate into Astral Communion. I actually made a video that I'm going to put on the Facebook page of a couple of the fun games that I had. But it's just basically I innervate out Astral Communion, and then it's like, do I get Aviana into Deathwing or Deathwing Overlord or whatever?
Yep.
Like, Onyxia, just drop some big dragons and say, you're dead.
Yep. It was great. I ran into a bunch of people playing Astral Communion, goofing around, but not once was I Deathwinged. And that was after I had watched you go 8-2, I think.
Yeah. Out
of 10 games with the Astral Communion. I just watched you play 10 straight games. And it was just, I was like, man, why isn't anyone else putting Deathwing in their deck?
What was really cool is when you could actually go, like, when you had the ability to Deathwing into Deathwing, because like you would play your Deathwing and then they would play something, then they passed to you, and then you hit them for 12, and then just played another Deathwing, and you still had a 12/12 on board, and they still didn't have anything.
Right.
So you just Deathwing into Deathwing.
Right.